Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to, I guess, the first ever Educate Me, our virtual symposium. This is our attempt at replicating the longstanding tradition that the OGCA has had since 2004 of a live action symposium. Unfortunately, under the circumstances due to COVID and the many restrictions placed, this is the best that we can do, but this is at least our opportunity to network, albeit virtually, and connect with one another because I can say that the industry has been fantastic during this pandemic. We have banded together. We have ensured that we're supporting one another. We're going to have comments from the Honorable Monty McNaughton in just a little while. And he's been resolute and staunch in his position with construction and on behalf of construction. Before he starts speaking, I would like the opportunity to thank Minister McNaughton for all he's done. But I'd be remiss if I didn't invite my co-host, Devin Maltley from Travelers, come on and say a few words. Devin, good morning. How are you, sir, other than stuck in that little room of yours that you have been for the last year?
You've seen me here before. Good morning, Giovanni. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning.
So I will say that Devin has been great throughout this somewhat arduous situation, and Travelers themselves have been fantastic in stepping up. Just out of curiosity, Devin, how long has Travelers been doing the symposium? Has it been since the onset?
Yeah, we just confirmed, I guess, yesterday that and that was in 2004 was the first one, so long ago. And so throughout those years, we've been sponsoring since the start.
You know what? I think that it's fantastic. Just out of curiosity, what's prompted Travelers to continually support this symposium?
Well, I think in any period of time, information and knowledge and insight's important. But when you look at a time of, I like to call it unprecedented uncertainty. I think we use that word unprecedented too much in this last year, but it's been tough personally and professionally for everyone. So I think that insight and knowledge is more important than it's ever been, and that's what the symposium does. So I think it's really important right now.
That's fantastic. And on behalf of the OGCA, we thank Travelers for your support. But I've got to ask, and again, just a personal question, since I'm the new guy around, and I know Travelers has competing interests with other associations, and you're pulled in multiple different directions. Why is it that you focused on the OGCA? What is it of us? And don't tell me it's my personality, because I'm the new guy.
Well, it's your personality and a few other things. We're very proud to call many OGCA members clients, and of course this is an opportunity to thank them for their loyalty and for all these years. But at Travelers Canada, our vision is to work hard to take care of our customers, our communities, and of course each other. It's a responsibility and a privilege we don't take lightly, and it's at the heart of every bond we issue. The Travelers Promise, we call it, and we call it building a better Canada together. And I just so I share that because I think it's really aligned with what the OGCA sets out to do every day, which is build a better Ontario together. And again, for us, it's an opportunity to say thank you, for all the great things, all the things that your members overcame this year, and just to build this critical infrastructure that we need right now and do it safely, which creates again safety within our communities.
Oh, I think Devin has been. He's back.
Sorry, what did you miss? No. I think we're good. We just want to say thank you. That's the sum of it.
So on the topic of collaboration and working together and community, and on the points that you raised about building Ontario, I would take this opportunity to switch gears a little bit and introduce someone who I don't think requires an introduction. We have with us this morning the Honorable Monty McNaughton, the Minister of Labour. Was it training and skills development. And Monty, again, as I said from the onset, has been staunch in his support of construction since this entire ordeal. It's been over a year now. And I will give you just a tidbit of information prior to him making his address. So approximately a year ago, we had obviously COVID hit, and there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions, and a lot of the industry needed guidance. And during those turbulent times, the the CPO office of Ron Kalowski, so you've got Minister McNaught, Ron Kalowski, and the OGCA got together and created a guidance document for COVID-19, and we did so through our safety committee. And I've got to tell you, the Herculean efforts that were put together to do it, we did it within 3 days. And if anyone knows the pace of government and how they normally travel, 3 days is light years. And so with that being said, I just wanted to preface the introduction and the opening comments that Minister McNaught will make, saying that Monty has been fantastic in his support. And I do think he's going to touch upon some vaccinations and whatnot as well. So that's another aspect of construction that we were included in phase 2. And so without further ado, I would like everyone, I'm going to introduce the Honorable Monty McNaughton. Monty, you have the floor.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Jimmy, for that. It's so great to be with all of you this morning, and I just can't wait to be with you in person. I know we're all feeling the same way. I also want to just say thanks to Devin. He and I were sort of backstage in this for a little while. Devin is actually from the riding that I represent in Lambton, Kent, Middlesex. He's from a town called Wallaceburg, which is actually the second biggest municipality in my riding. So Devin, thanks for everything and for your support of this program. It's no secret. I tell everyone I absolutely love construction. I love all of your companies and the workers and just the vital role that all of you play. I mean, when you think of, and I'll talk about this in a few moments, but more than 500,000 people working in construction, approximately 65,000 women. You are doing heroic work, especially during this pandemic. Part of it is I fell in love with construction at a very young age, as many of you will know, in a little town called Newbury in the riding of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, between London and Chatham. My family and I owned for many, many years a big lumberyard and hardware store. So I grew up. I often tell people now I can't publicly say at what age my dad had me working in the family business, because as the Minister of Labor, there's rules against that. But it's from loading drywall and plywood and pressure treated lumber for people that I met contractors and the workers and just so many in the industry. So thanks for everything you're doing, and we certainly always have your back. I'm just really happy to be here today to bring greetings personally from Emmer Ford. He wanted to be here today, but some of you may know that he is going to get his vaccination this morning. And I think that's around 9 o'clock, but the time can change at the last minute, but he's certainly getting his vaccination at a pharmacy in Etobicoke this morning. Just on the vaccination rollout, a lot of this gets lost in the media, but I have to tell you, things are really, really moving quickly. Within the next 8 days, 40% of adults in Ontario will have been vaccinated. Demand is skyrocketing every single day. I haven't seen the data as far as the number of registrations yesterday, but 2 days ago, 370,000 people went online or called the toll-free number to register for their vaccination. So we're making huge progress. And lastly on this front, as Giovanni said, it is really exciting. I was proud to make some calls last week. The government has moved up prioritization for construction and construction workers to this phase. So I think that's, us showing a debt of gratitude and just thankfulness to the entire industry for everything that all of you are doing, building that critical infrastructure. As all of you know, I don't have to tell you, but you build our hospitals, our schools, our factories, stores, the places where we shop, work, learn, and go for care. You truly are the backbone of Ontario's infrastructure. And as I mentioned, you provide just meaningful, well-paying jobs for more than 500,000 people. These are jobs that their families and all of our communities depend on. So thank you so much for that. That's why it really is so important. It's mission critical for me. I know the Premier is solidly behind us on this, but it's mission critical that we continue working together to keep job sites open safely. The decision to keep construction open during the stay-at-home order reflects not only how important the work you do is, but it also, as Giovanni mentioned, reflects how closely we've all been able to work together. And Giovanni, you'll remember this. There were so many people during those first few days when COVID hit Ontario, and they still pop up, especially some of those others at Queen's Park that's still calling us to shut down construction. But during those first few days, I mean, there was a lot of pressure on us to just close it down completely. And I took a different path. I picked up the phone, called the OGCA, called our labor partners, called other industry leaders and employers out there and said, how can we come together to ensure that we keep construction open safely? And I'm really proud. The very first guidance document that the entire ministry issued was for construction. Now we have more than 200 resources and dozens of guidelines available at ontario.ca/COVID safety. So really proud. Obviously, nothing is more important to me than the safety and well-being of all of the people and workers in Ontario. And it includes those thousands of workers on job sites every day. All workers deserve to come home safely after a hard day's work. To this end, construction has been allocated 40,000 rapid tests per week to help screen workers. We've also developed materials to help contractors and other employers develop safety plans, which is so important to avoid COVID-19 from entering job sites. And we've hired 100 new Ministry of Labor Training and Skills Development inspectors, which will create the largest inspectorate in history. And we've certainly worked at ensuring that we are reaching out to job sites and to all places of work, doing education first approach. We've certainly, on the overwhelming majority of employers, are doing a great job in ensuring health and safety measures are followed on job sites. And it's just critically important that construction continues doing this during the stay-at-home order and the state of emergency. Obviously, staying open carries a lot of responsibility, so we need everyone to do everything possible to keep workers safe. Lastly, I just want to touch on the economic recovery that's coming in Ontario. Construction alone needs more than 100,000 skilled trades workers over the next 10 years. All of you, including us and government, needs to ensure that you have a pipeline of talent and the skilled workers to get projects done on time. And as I've said, and all of you at the OGCA work closely with me on this and say the same thing, that these are meaningful jobs that pay well. You get to see the results of your own work on a daily basis. I know I live beside a construction worker, and he has so much pride in telling me every time I see him different projects that he's worked on. As I've said before, there is as much merit in becoming a carpenter, a equipment operator, or an electrician as there is in being a banker or a lawyer. So I'm working really hard. Our government has made it a priority to make people aware of these opportunities and to help prepare them for these jobs. We're increasing investments, more than $600 million extra in training and getting people into the skilled trades. Really focusing on ensuring that educators and parents and young people just know about these amazing careers, and that there's actually 140 different skilled trades to choose from. So I know the last time I spoke with the OGCA, the conference was focused on health and safety. Today, I understand your topics are going to include digital transformation and cyber, which is really exciting and important. So I applaud your continued efforts to share knowledge and making learning a lifelong process. So I just want to thank everyone. Keep up the great work. Have a productive and information-packed event. My door is always open to you, and we'll continue working every single day through the pandemic and as we come out to ensure that construction remains strong in Ontario. So thanks, Giovanni.
Minister McNaughton, thank you very much. As you can see, we're getting reactions from the crowd. You're getting a bunch of hearts sent to you, so that's wonderful. Again, I will warn everyone, all the participants and the panelists, that I've invited Minister McNaughton to stay on for the duration of the day. So if you get a strategically question, he gets the opportunity to grill you as opposed to the other way around. So I'm glad that you gave us the thumbs up on that. So without further ado, we've now I'm going to hand over the baton to my co-host Devin, so that he can run with it with the very first session that we have, which is the digital transformation of the construction industry and how cyber risk will change your business. Devin, take it away.
Thanks, Giovanni. Very excited to kick this off. I can't think of a more important issue right now for contractors than digital transformation and cyber risk. So it is my pleasure to introduce this next session. Steve?
How's it going, Devin? I kind of lost you. I heard very good man. I'm hoping you were going to throw in maybe handsome and good looking, but thanks for that.
In the interest of time.
So really appreciate it. Hello everyone, and welcome to today's kickoff session for the OGCA Educate Me Virtual Symposium. My name is Stephen Gibb, and I work within the Marsh Canada Limited National Construction and Surety Practice. Marsh Canada Limited as an APP thank the OGCA for allowing Marsh to sponsor and put together a group of panelists who have volunteered their time to speak to this audience. Over the next hour, our panelists will be having a spirited discussion regarding the impacts of the digital transformation and technology integration in the construction landscape and best practices for protecting contractors from tangible consequences of digital risk and insecure data. I'd like to take this time to introduce today's panelists. We're first joined by our moderator, Brian Arnold, President and CEO of Eastern Construction. Alongside Brian is Adam Templeton, Vice President and Lead of Information Services for ACON. We're also joined by two very knowledgeable and fellow colleagues of mine from Marsh Canada Limited. First is Marsh Canada Limited Cyber Practice Leader, Ruby Ray. And rounding out our esteemed panel is Marsh Canada Limited's Technology Industry Leader, Chris Johnson. If you'd like to get to know our panelists a little better, please find their bios in the speaker section on AirMeet following this session. As well, we'll be leaving some time at the end of the session for any questions or comments from the audience. Please share your questions with the questions tab on the right side of your screen, and we'll try our best to address as many as we can. Also, a recorded version of this webinar will be available to all Educate Me registrants following today's session. With further ado, I'd like to turn it now over to our panelists.
Great, thank you, Stephen. So this morning, to address the topic, we've put together a series of questions that we're going to have panelists to answer and spur on some conversation about the digital transformation in the construction industry and the cyber risks that go along with it. And if we have time at the end permitting, we will address other questions. So let's start off with the digital transformation of construction. So the first question is the construction industry reliant on digital technology? And is digital technology the way of the future in construction? So I'd like to ask Adam to take the first crack at addressing this, maybe.
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. I believe that there's a strong reliance today, if not growing in all aspects of our industry, from how we estimate our bids, our job and our jobs, design and build. Technology is becoming a major factor in the efficiencies that we look for to drive better execution. I mean, and if you're not adopting these technologies, your partners and your clients are going to expect that you are going to meet their requirements, or in worst case, your competitors are getting the advantage of using these technologies. So I think that understanding, though, that this is a journey that many of us are on. It's not about boiling the ocean, but looking at particular use cases that are relate specifically to your business and finding adequate solution to create those efficiencies. And of course, by evaluating the cost to value as you make the transition is really important. I mean, and as for the future, I think that the amount of data that we're going to be consuming is going to be a very interesting play for the industry. I mean, especially as it relates to our health and safety, our fleet. I mean, we rely heavily on vehicles and our people to get work completed. Being able to harness that data to give us the valuable insights on future projects, I believe will eventually become the norm. So I think that's, understanding that the transformation is not instant. It's not one thing that you do and you're done. It's absolutely a journey, and figuring out where you can isolate and make those efficiencies, and understanding what your cost and what the value is really what's going to drive that. And as that relates to cyber risk, I think that there's an opportunity to also reduce risk through that digitization, through that journey. So I absolutely think that there is a reliance today, and we're not talking about email. We're talking about how we're scheduling our jobs, how we're estimating our jobs, all the way down to the execution.
Thanks, Adam. And I guess along with that, how does the construction industry and its shift to digital-based business models compare to other industries, or how is it different?
Yeah, it can be difficult to visualize. I mean, how we can digitize an industry where the fundamentals of each project can have varying degrees of complexity. I mean, not to mention the strong human element to get the job completed. A shovel in the ground, for example. I don't believe that it's that different in a sense if you break it down into its parts, from procurement and supply chain to schedule and work packages. There's elements that can be made more efficient through that process. And just, again, it's about finding that suitable use case that you can identify as either a challenge or a problem, isolating that and working toward the digitization strategy for that particular use case. I mean, it can be as basic as reducing paper-based forms in the field, increasing collaboration by leveraging mobile, or even leveraging cloud-based solutions to offload some of those back office tasks. And there's lots of areas, I think, that the use cases could be put towards, but I think it's not a matter of just saying, I want to go digital. You need to isolate what are your problem areas, what are the challenges, and work towards it.
Thanks, Adam. I guess I look at it from our perspective too, as a construction company. I don't think a month goes by where we don't see to adopt some new form of technology. And as you say, it can be very simple, or it can be very elaborate. Even just on how we pay our trades and our workers. Years ago, we would issue standard paychecks out to all our employees. I can't remember the last time we've done that. So it does move along. I look at other industries like the auto industry, which is so automated. And I see the construction industry going down similar roads. We're looking at prefabrication, and you don't necessarily have to have an assembly line or a plant just to achieve that. You've got, modularization. We all do it. We do it in things like curtain walls and exterior wall assemblies and precast panels and that. So it's very important. along with that, we obviously have the cyber risks that increase as you go along with that. So I guess, one of the questions would be, what are some of the additional cyber risks as a result of this, and maybe even specifically the pandemic? I'm going to ask Stephen if he can bring a slide up here, and Ruby, if maybe you could talk to him.
Absolutely, and hopefully you're able to hear me. My internet was a little glitchy a minute ago. I'm going to take a step back, and I know the audience today will hear more about use of artificial intelligence in construction, and I believe that will be the ongoing theme. But really, when we take a look at just last year alone, not even the years before, as organizations and industries, construction adapt technology, we're all technology firms. I don't think there's any industry sector that doesn't use technology. It is meant to benefit us. It's meant to streamline our operations. It's meant to give us more insights. And as industries like construction, they see benefit into how adapting technology and building efficiencies through use of technology can, make profit, increase the efficiency of a project, provide more services to the employees, even from a health and benefits and safety point of view. The technology aspect is not going to go away anytime soon. What happened in last year, 18 months, is the realization that we have to use technology, and the pandemic really brought that to forefront. Even the organizations that were thinking of adapting technology on a broader scale had to pivot very, very quickly. And with that came the challenges of security. There was a little bit of a rush to, we need to operate, we need to keep afloat, we need to deliver on our promises. In this environment, we're going to use technology to do that, but that kind of opened the floodgates a little bit. And I'm using a conservative word here, that what that did was increase the threat landscape for threat actors, for malicious actors to benefit from that. So what does that really mean is if someone's using a remote connection, which is not secure, if someone's using technology that's bought off the shelf, it has not been tested in your environment, trusted a third-party solution, which is not secure, all it does is makes that organization a lot more vulnerable to being attacked. What this slide really does is, on the left side, it shows you back in the day, we knew about 2 or 3 bad guys or threats that were out there that was exploiting organizations. Fast forward to 2021, what you see on the right side of the graph, the very colorful graph, is only 45% of the threat actors that we know of and see frequently. So the rest and the majority of it is an increasing risk of vulnerabilities and exploitations that is happening to our clients and industries. On the right side, where you see is the ransomware pandemic. Within our industry, we call it the second pandemic. In addition to COVID, it's a little bit of a double whammy because as organizations struggle to float, they're also now dealing with the additional expense of being attacked and being extorted. What we saw in last 18 months was an exponential increase. And Stephen, if you wanted to jump in the next slide, it does a good job of showing the 2.4 times increase from years ago to what it looks like right now. Public sector, private sector. Public sector used to be the leader. Private sector is now starting to increase again. So really, again, don't dive too deep into the numbers here this morning, but I just wanted to give an idea, Brian. The risk is not going away anytime soon. The technology will keep getting adapted, but at the same time, we need to be conscious and recognize the use of technology also creates risks.
Great, Ruby. I'd like to add something there that I had a conversation with our insurance provider the other week, and we were talking about the added risk of people working remotely now. Like lots of our organizations, like ours, have put a tremendous amount of work into putting systems and firewalls and protections, but it's all kind of assumed that we're working from our office space now due to the pandemic. Many of our employees, almost all of them, are working remotely from home. So how does that factor in? And if we seem to have lost Ruby, maybe I can ask Chris to jump in.
Sure. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. So, it's not an issue that's unique to construction per se, and the idea of switching to this more hybridized model of part working from home, part on site, part physical back office, all for everything we've seen, this is a world that it will stay likely forever in some capacity. And Ruby highlighted it a little bit earlier as well. It will change some of the risks, but it will also offer some opportunities as well. When you look at things like reducing some of the costs around your physical footprint for real estate, or even for things like your availability of expertise and staff. Outside of that, the real risks are the idea that your work from home is a weakest link solution. And what that really means is that your staff who are home, especially those who are not used to being home, especially those who are handed a laptop or a digital remote device sometime in the near future, are very likely to be somewhat new to it, or are starting to feel fatigue, especially as we look outside and we think, gosh, we are over a year of sitting working from home, and maybe that email that isn't legit does look legitimate, and I click on that link and something happens, or I have a friend, or my husband is using my laptop overnight and he follows a link that he shouldn't and something else occurs. The reality is, as we've moved to this remote environment, the ability for things like IT services, those back office people like Adam who help drive and keep your business connected and secure, are increasingly struggling because, COVID is accelerating it, absolutely. But really, it's the idea that when you're in a physical building, you have a lot more actual control over what's going on versus once people start working remotely. And even after the pandemic, it will continue as people, travel and go through coffee shops and leave the tops as they go to the bathroom and things. But it absolutely becomes what we call your weakest link, which is just that you really need to focus on, and the energy you need to spend is on that education piece of the staff to better arm them and equip them to fight on your behalf against phishing attempts, against cyber breaches or different attacks, because they become your frontline staff around defending your infrastructure, your digital infrastructure.
So, Chris, just maybe work off that. Why should a GC take their cyber risk seriously? I'm a general contractor. I build buildings. This isn't a threat to me. They're after the big companies like Adams.
Sure.
So, what are the challenges that they face in even identifying what their cyber risks are? Like, how am I going to get attacked? And how do I identify them and get rid of them? So,
yeah, absolutely. And it's a common misconception that I'm too small, I'm not the intended audience or the intended target, that my business is not on target. The reality is, and the way I like to describe it is, it's just like if you have children or you have pets, they have 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to wait for that one moment when you're not watching for them to grab something from the counter. And that is exactly how people in sort of the more nefarious sides of digital, the people who will hack, who will submit you to a ransomware attack, it's exactly how they operate. And for a lot of them, it is a wide net, as wide as humanly possible, capture anyone. They absolutely go after the big fish for sure, but they just as frequently go after the very small mom and pop shops who maybe don't have the infrastructure, the knowledge, or the support to handle anything other than to say, pay a couple $1,000s or a couple $10,000 or a couple hundreds of thousands of dollars to unlock their system to regain business because they know that they'll do it quickly rather than risk the threat of being down for a month and most often going out of business. Now, ways that companies can look at it and can visit it, I mean, the biggest thing to realize is that cyber risk is not an IT responsibility. It is an every part of the business responsibility. Whether you are a 10-person back office and you have one IT person in the background, or you are a 500-person office, you need to recognize that it starts with HR, it works through operations, it works through finance, it works through legal and compliance, and it works through all of your frontline staff, whether they be customer service support or even on site, to make sure that devices are secure, to understand the responsibilities around emails and phishing attempts, to understand the responsibilities around maintaining their physical devices and looking at things like USB drives or looking at things like nefarious emails, and educating, coaching everyone to realize that the only way to support and secure yourselves is to do it together, and recognizing that one of the realities, the unfortunate realities of cyber risk, is that it's not an if situation. It's not a maybe I'll get through it situation. It's most likely a when situation. And what is your ability to manage that interruption look like and continue to remain open for business and moving forward?
Thanks, Chris.
And one aspect I will add to that, Brian, why should GCs look at the risk or take it seriously? We sometimes forget the type of data and the type of projects that someone might be working on, right? We say we are not being targeted just because we're small. It's, do you have something someone think is beneficial or could lead them to a bigger fish? So when we talk about lower hanging fruit, what type of information or project, what type of blueprints or designs do you have that could then open the door to someone else? And that's, when we look at forensics report, when we do a debriefing or triage of an incident that comes through, sometimes when you follow the tracks, it really, we find that it was really meant for someone else, but you just happen to be in the way, and also easier to target. So from that perspective, I think cyber risk should be taken seriously, and also just the reputation impact that comes with it, and not being able to fulfill your promise, or next time you're bidding, you might be noticed as someone who dealt with an incident or was attacked, and might be asked those questions. What have you done about it?
Yeah, I just want to add that, Ruby, because you touched on a good point. I echo what Chris is saying as well. It's not about size, because we work with small, we work with medium, and we work with large. And I think all of our threats, all of the biggest threats are the same for each of us. Here at ACON, it's phishing attacks, ransomware, and authentication are our three biggest threats to ACON. I'm sure if I asked anybody else, it would likely be the same. We talked about remote workforce and endpoint protection, securing your laptops, your printers, and everything else, and the networks that they reside on. But back to the point made that it's also the partners that we work with. We work on major joint venture projects. We rely on our partners' security as well, because we're all sitting in the same office, we're sitting in the same trailers. And we've seen it, for us, we've seen one of our partners that we're working on a major project be down for weeks with a ransomware attack. And it makes us question, when we talk about reputation, it makes us question, how they manage the severity of their security and systems, especially on these major projects and for future bids. So I think it's not about size. I think it's really, and it's not about IT, as Chris mentioned. It's about everybody coming together, understanding that this is a real threat, and investing in it. So that's just some point I'd like to add.
That's great. So, Adam, while you're talking about that, it seems to be a common thread here from the view that the attack always goes through one of my employees. So is that the weak link? And how do I address my employees so that we strengthen that?
Yeah, education and training first and foremost. Chris touched on it as well. I think helping them understand why. For us, at ACON, we relate safety and security terminology, near misses, and criticalities as measures to say, and also now that we're working from home, using the home security terminology as well. You don't leave your front door unlocked. Using physical security to kind of help people understand why, because they are the lowest common denominator and the weakest link. The easiest way to get through is through the front door, and working on accessing somebody's credentials and using those phishing campaigns. So we've put together a robust security and education program because we feel that the statistics don't lie. 90% plus are of all breaches come from a phishing campaign or someone who's clicked on a link or through a ransomware attack. So we really need to educate our employees, and it's not an IT issue. This is an everyone issue. I think that's been said.
So I guess, accept that. I guess the question I'd like to throw out is, can a company afford their operations to get shut down for an extended period of time? Like, that's devastating when I think about it with the company I'm working for. But how can I get peace of mind? I have the safeguards to protect my business.
Yeah, I come back to identifying the company's crown jewels, as I call them. How long can you operate without email? How long can you operate without payroll? How long can you operate without bidding in your estimating software, your scheduling tools? Associating that downtime with cost, I think is where you take your understanding. And if a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, then you safeguard those services. And you look back to the basics, the endpoint protection, your patching, removing the ability for people to install anything on their computers, looking at governance around and the compliancy around your systems, making people adhere to technology policies, performing risk assessments and training. I think these are all the fundamentals. And then, of course, they're transferring the risk of having to manage those things. Moving those traditional servers to cloud-based applications and environments such as Office 365, and of course the insurance coverage to provide those additional benefits beyond just a worst-case scenario.
Great, Ruby. I guess like on that too. Like, what would you see as a minimum or average downtime firms are going to experience when they are attacked?
Yeah, it's a great question, Brian, and it truly is very diverse. If we look at the spectrum, there are organizations who have planned for this, and then there are organizations who's never planned for this. And that really dictates how long and the impact, even the financial impact. So to your earlier question, what can organizations do to prepare? Testing, say if you were to run a scenario right now, if you were down for 72 hours or 2 days or 3 days or 4, what would the impact be? Because sometimes we see, even after clients test, they think that, okay, we will be good for 72 hours. We're not going to see any impact on our income. We're not going to see any delays in our projects. We'll be fine. In reality, that 72 hours can sometimes look like 7 days. And that has happened even for most best prepared, because we don't know. And in scenarios when there is an attack, and sometimes, we try ransomware attacks, sometimes it is negligence too. The impact can be catastrophic. If you're not being able to access most of your systems, it can take a long time to recover. That time can also increase if you're relying on third-party solution and technology, because you don't know how effectively they will be up and running and what the time period will be. So, the point Adam made, that we are kind of an ecosystem of vendors. We rely on each other's services and technologies. It really depends. When we're looking at downtime, we should not look at not only ours, but our partners that we work with. Because in a real scenario, that 72 hours or 24 hours in reality can look like weeks.
Okay, you sold me. I think the next thing is like identifying the cyber risks. So as a GC, how should I approach? What's the best way for my organization to identify them? And then what steps can I take to address them? So I don't know, Chris, do you want to start off with this one? Then
sure, yeah, I'm happy to. And the biggest thing to realize is, Adam touched on it before, and it's a great term that I love to use as well. It's a journey. It's not simply I need to solve a problem and I tick a box and I walk away. There is an almost never-ending series of steps that need to be created and then maintained and secured for the life of the business, and that includes yourself and anyone you do business with as well, including anyone who may be investing in you too. When you look at that journey, part of the thing as well to look at is that it's not something that you need to solve purely by yourselves. If you are a smaller company and you don't have a robust IT services team in-house, you also have the ability to look at third-party companies that specialize specifically in this, that can do things like walk through your systems and look for vulnerabilities, that can do things like mock situations where you enact as if a breach had occurred or as if a ransomware event has happened live, and have the ability to walk through the processes you've created in place to see if they'll actually hold up in real time. So it's not so much something that you need to attack on your own, and it's not something that you need to feel overwhelmed with to say, how do I do this? What does this look like? There are a team of businesses that are designed to help you drive this, and part of that can be actually achieved through relationships with companies like insurance carriers and brokers as well.
Great. Have you had any experience with this type of challenge, especially with maybe some of the contractors you deal with?
Yeah, I mean, I could name a few examples. Where they'll look at these hackers, they'll go to no end, but they'll leverage these small contractors that they know partner with ACON or supply chain, and they'll buy out the domains of these companies with a similar name, and they'll go after your payroll departments or your accounts receivable and say, hey, there's an unpaid invoice. They'll build a rapport with the individual over email. You believe that the email that you're receiving is actually from the contractor, and over time eventually say, well, hey, here's another invoice, and our bank wire information has changed. Here's the new wiring information. If you don't have business processes in place to safeguard yourself against something like that, approvals, and it doesn't need to be a technology solution. It's more around the process. That's one way to simplify and protect yourselves against this, because in that case, we've got a process that if we're going to change any banking information in our systems, there has to be an approval process, and there's checks and balances and due diligence that happens there. If those checks and balances are down to one person, and it's not necessarily negligence, they've got 20 emails in a day they got to get through, or they're not paying attention, or they're trying to get the work done. That's the cases we found with phishing simulations, is that people are clicking on links not because they're being negligent or they're not reading their emails. They're just busy, they're distracted. And I think that's where I come back to the education piece. I think that business process around safeguarding some of those critical functions is important. Just to add to what Chris was saying as well is running an annual, have an external party come in and running annual penetration testing where they try to get into your system. They'll identify the gaps and say, here's some areas where you've got weak authentication, or here's some areas that are unpatched that should be patched. And they'll also be able to test. You've got a third-party security firm or managed services. They'll be able to see if they're cutting it when it comes to the contract terms that you put in place to secure your organization. So there is definitely ways that organizations can do to help in identifying those cyber risks.
So, maybe to go a little further into that, like how can insurance help with the risk solutions that we're talking about, mitigate the impact of the cyber risks? Ruby, maybe you can start off with this.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. Insurance really is your ally in managing cyber risk. And again, Chris and Adam done a really good job identifying, what does the exposure can look like. And because we want companies to do what they are doing best possible way, right? You don't want now suddenly to become a technology service provider, right? Like you want to focus on your core capability and keep providing that service to your customers and clients. In the meantime, the risk is still sitting there. So while you are looking at solutions and you're looking at doing vulnerability assessments, what are our gaps? How should we bridge these gaps? You still have a solution through insurance to look at those gaps, and protect you from those gaps. So where insurance really, of course, we can talk about insurance coverage, but what I really wanted to talk about is the risk control and the loss prevention services that your insurance provider can actually help you with, because it's for their benefit too that you're a secure organization. So they actually invest in your securities, and it's easy ones like employee training, absolutely critical, right? Insurers will ask you, do you provide annualized, at the very minimum, annualized, if not quarterly, employee security awareness training? And if you don't, here's a tool. A lot of time it's a complementary tool, and it's a very cost effective, especially for a smaller to medium sized organization, because you're looking at an employee force of maybe 80 to 100 or 200. It's easily customizable, and then you don't have to do that, right? And experts coming in and taking care of that for you on your behalf. Even getting you in touch with external parties who are experts in the event of an incident, absolutely critical, right? Because it is demands going by up in a ransomware situation by hours. Right, you need someone. You never want to talk to or interact with a threat actor yourself. You want someone more who has the expertise to interact and negotiate on your behalf. More importantly, to even find out if the threat is real. How do you even find out if they really have your data that they're saying that they do, right? Do you even want to engage with them? As a CEO, you would want all of that information in front of you before you even make the decision to pay or not to pay, right? All of that external parties and access to those external vendors who will kind of quarterback the incident for you and manage the incident for you will help you as a decision maker to decide whether to pay or not to pay. And then, that really is the role of insurance. Of course, coverage is broad. We talk to our clients on a daily basis about decreasing costs of cyber insurance right now, because these policies are paying out every day, right? In 2014, as an insurer, I was paying an average demand of $200,000 or $250,000 ransom. And now insurer cutting a check of $2 million, 2.5 on a weekly basis. And we're talking small organizations, we're not talking large, because larger organizations are paying tens of millions of dollars in ransom demands right now. So insurance is really coming through for our clients. It's a viable product. It's still going to stay here to help the clients out, and we should take advantage of it.
Great. That's some really good information. I guess, just while we're talking about that, so I have cyber insurance, but how do I prepare myself to deal with that when the situation comes up? What do I need to know about my policy and program and who I should be reaching out to?
So yeah, you with your broker will do that response preparedness, right? I talked about being prepared. Every organization has sort of an incident response planning. So actually taking your insurance document that comes with, sometimes there's a hotline or a 24/7 help number. And of course your broker is there too, but having that preset vendor. So let's look at what are the services someone would need. You need to engage with a privacy lawyer. We call them breach coaches. Again, They help you negotiate contracts with other vendors. They maintain privilege. If there's anything that they find during recovery, they will protect it for you so that there's no liability at a later date. You need a breach coach, you need a forensic partner, you need a ransom first responder, and maybe a crisis communication firm who can, should you want to release a press release or talk to your clients or employees, right? Those are 4 core services. The best way you can take advantage is talk to those firms before an incident happens. Know them, have their numbers ready to go. And it's really not a joke, because I always advise our clients to have their numbers at home, because when systems go down and you're not able to access your emails, you can't access your incident response plan either. You almost need to go to paper or something where you know who to call. So building those relationships and identifying, you don't have to pay anything. You can have them on retainer. You can understand what their scope of work is going to be so that there's no disappointment when the incident happens, who needs to do what, and then do a mock analysis. Run a scenario. Sometimes some organization won't even tell their employees that they're going to run a scenario, and then they see how everyone reacts and take lessons from it. So do all of those exercises. So if something should happen, you're effectively using your insurance premiums. It really, really comes to your aid at that time.
Thank you, Ruby. It was great, but I'm going to put you on the spot. So I'm a small GC. I'm going to say around $20 to $30 million worth of revenue annually. I have 25 employees. Okay, so I want to get cyber insurance. What's it going to cost me? What can I expect to pay?
Yeah, I'm a broker. I'm not going to put myself in a corner by saying numbers here, but what I can say is it depends, right? When you go to get, say, health insurance, how have you been taking care of your health will dictate the terms the insurance provider will give you, right? It's this approach. What have you done to make your company or your controls effective? So, again, employee training, using technology that is, to certain degrees secure or patched. What's your philosophy? Who's responsible for making technology decisions? Someone in IT, or you as the owner operator of that business? Or if you don't have that expertise, have you contracted with an external reputable third party who can do that on your behalf? Those basic hygiene is what an insurer would look at to give you competitive rates. Right now, because the insurers are paying losses every day, and when we see them as it's come in, they want you to do the best that you can before they will take your risk. Right? If those basic controls or basic hygiene is not present, they will refuse to write your risk, or they will charge you exponentially higher. Back in the day, $1 million worth of cyber insurance would cost, for a small organization, anywhere between $2,500 to $5,000. That was the wide range. Right now, for a very, very small organization, that $1 million can go up to $10,000 or $12,000. Again, in the grand scheme of things, when we look at the actual losses being paid out, it is still extremely competitive and cost effective.
Yeah, I guess the way I like to look at it is you can almost parallel it to driver's insurance. The better your record, the lower the premium. So it may start off a little bit high, like you were suggesting, but as you develop the safeguards and the systems, and the insurers see those in place, they're going to consider you a lower risk and give a better rate. So that's what we're experiencing. We do have at our company cyber insurance, and I couldn't see operating today without it, quite frankly. So it is important point. So I'm just mindful of time here. I want to just kind of jump back a little bit. We've all talked about what it's going to do to your organization if you get attacked and that, and we're kind of focusing on the actual operations. But there's some other spin-offs that you need to consider when you're looking at this. So, and one of them I'm going to say is your reputation and your clients. And maybe Adam, do you want to kind of speak to the concerns about what that can bring when you're working with higher profile clients?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing now a shift, even when we're bidding on projects, that the client is asking, what is your security framework? What certifications do you have? What protections and safeguards do you have against our data? Where does your data reside? These are questions that come up more and more frequently in our bidding stages. So it's not just about now protecting and safeguarding yourselves and your own reputation, but it's also the reputation potentially of your clients. And we've found that that's now an important metric for us to track. And of course, when we're talking about insurance and ensuring that we've got controls in place to protect our own organization. But as mentioned earlier, when we partner now on major projects, we now need to work with our partners and ask the same questions, because that's what the client's demanding. So it's not just about preventing a security breach in the most foundational terms. It's actually about gaining and winning business. So I think that when we go back to our the public relations aspect and the perceived reputation of your organization, you're essentially becoming a technology and security company when you're bidding on these projects, because you have to safeguard your clients' data. We've seen in the past where we've had to stand up a data center or negotiate a cloud contract that only hosted the data in Canada, because our client set the requirement at that. And it was previously it was in the States as well. So we had to. This is a growing concern, not just for the organization that you operate under, but also your potential partners and your clients.
Thank you, Adam. That's great. So, just kind of adding to that, as our firm, many years ago, like we worked in the nuclear industry, and they're very concerned about their safeguards of their documents and that. And I remember when we started in the industry, and we had to have a special room and special filing cabinets and special locks. And they actually came in and inspected our sites. And now we've moved into the digital age. So the room is just a regular storage room because everything is stored digitally. But now it's what protections do you have digitally to do that? And as we go forward, I don't think there's a day go by that I don't sign a non-disclosure agreement with a client. When you're signing those, you're saying that you will keep all their information confidential, and cyber attacks have the exposure of that information getting out within the public. So it is something to really think about. Looking 5 years down the road, though, what are some of the rapidly emerging trends that you see, Adam?
Yeah, I see we just lost Chris there, and I would have thrown that one right over to him. But
it's okay, I'm back.
He's back.
You're back?
I'm back.
Okay, well, I'm happy to throw out a few, but I'll let you take the lead, Chris.
Sure, yeah, and I missed half it, but I'm assuming, Brian, that you're asking about what does construction look like from a technology basis 5 years down the road.
Correct.
Perfect. So, and this is the part where it gets kind of exciting, and the part where, I have a technology background, so I like to nerd it up a little bit. But although some of it may seem like science fiction, we're already seeing things, and you're already doing some of these things right now, like leveraging laptops, tablets, remote smart devices to stay connected with staff off-site or on-site or remote areas. But it's ramping up as well. We're looking at things like leveraging drones to do engineering surveys and for remote security. We're looking at things like Internet of Things, small devices connected over Wi-Fi to manage remote devices and physical assets. We're looking at things like robotics, everything from small devices to help make things easier to all the way up to exoskeletons, where we have the ability to increase the safety of our frontline staff by supporting, things like sensitive joints and back pains and creating safer environments for heavy lifting, and all the way up to things like what they call smart PPE, the ability to track our staff in ways to see, is this person tired? Have they been working too long? Is their heart rate irregular? Are things happening? Should we take them off the job site and give them a rest? Do they seem dehydrated? To reduce things like, to increase safety and reduce accidents, all the way down to things like 3D printing of rare or customized tools or parts or on-site machining. There's a whole series of different things that will help you on your way as you feel that squeeze to do more with less, faster, cheaper, and increasingly customized. That's sort of like my hit list of things that I'm seeing.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. I'm mindful of time here. I understand we have a couple of questions. I'm going to ask Stephen. Maybe you can jump back in and help us here.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a question from the audience, a gentleman named Andrew Sefton. And I think this is a question for Brian and Adam. If Ruby and Chris want to jump into, that's great. But what is the pre-qualification question general contractors are asking of subcontractors regarding their data compliance?
You may need to repeat that.
I think what you're saying is how are you pre-qualifying sub-trades in regards to data compliance?
Yeah, so we've, again, in terms of, I guess, transferring risk, we've adopted a solution that will help pre-qualify our subcontractors on our behalf. It's a global portal that essentially we can look up our subcontractors, see if they've been qualified from a safety point of view. It also shows us their qualifications, certifications, and we use that against our own pre-qualification tools to see if they're a fit for our organization. When it comes to security and data and how they manage their own data and certifications for pre-qualification, I wouldn't say that we're actively pursuing that unless they are heavily tied to us within a partnership. So today, it's probably something that we would be exploring down the road, but it's not happening today.
I'll just jump in there too. Is Adam, we're probably very similar in the fact that we don't do a lot of pre-qualifications with our subs when it comes to that, with the exception of when we're working on high security projects. We do a lot of work for government organizations that have high security. So we do start asking questions then. And, I like to put it in the phrase where we're doing a security project for the government. The controls contractor gave us a disk that had their control sequencing on it. And when we tried to open it, we couldn't. And they said, you will never be able to open it. So, here we are building something we didn't even actually know what was going in. But the owner did, and the controls contractor did. But it's becoming more prevalent, and subs should be prepared if they want to work in those markets, that they're going to have some checks and balances.
Yeah, and I'll clarify and say with regards to quality management on those more secure projects, absolutely, we do those reviews.
Yeah. Awesome, thanks, guys. And another question by Andrew, and a little broad, but I hope you guys can kind of center in on it. But I guess when working with sub-trades, when working with GCs, when working in a project in general, who owns the data that's, I guess, being transferred amongst the project?
Yeah, I can take, so what we do is we typically, when we look at our joint venture projects, we will, it's typically a management firm, a management co, and we will decide, who wants to take the lead on certain aspects of the joint venture. And in our case, we will bid as an IT service provider to that joint venture. So if AECON is chosen as the joint venture lead from an IT perspective, we will manage and host that data, and we will take on that additional risk along with the partners, or we'll break it out into a separate entity in itself. So that management liabilities and risks lands with the joint venture partners rather than the specific organization.
Yeah, we're maybe not as large as AECON and don't have that that type of setup, but really we would look at it that when it comes to some of the information, and I'm going to say specifically more the project models and things like that, we as a GC typically take ownership for that. But then when it comes to the specific trade shop drawings and stuff like that, we lead the ownership with the sub trade that we contract out to.
Awesome.
I hope that
and I do want to address the last question. I know OGCA makes my wrist as we're getting closer to the end. I think Chris had answered the gentleman, Cameron Byrne, from our audience's question in regards to technology, but I'm going to pivot that question a little bit and ask maybe Ruby and Chris, is there any other technology or strategies on a risk management perspective that our GC should be thinking about in regards to their implementation amongst their business?
Yeah, I mean,
Sure, I can.
Yeah, sorry, Ruby, you go ahead. I'll let you take that one.
No, you go ahead. From purely risk management perspective, I think it's a bigger governance question, right? Doesn't matter what industry you belong to. When you understand your risk, and let's not even call it cyber risk, let's call it technology risk, which is inherent to your business. It's just another tool that you use to do your business. So from a governance, as an owner, as an operator, as someone, partnership or JVs, the first step is really understanding what is my technology risk and what would that technology risk cost me on my balance sheet? What is that dollar amount? And that's the first step, because that will help you dictate how much you invest in risk management, how much you invest in bringing in third parties or insurance for that matter.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruby. I see Giovanni coming on, so I think that's the Oscars music that's happening in the background.
In all honesty, this session can go on probably for another hour with the number of questions that everyone will have. This obviously is not something that's stagnant. This is always evolving as technology does, and it's a topic that clearly we need to discuss further. I just want to say to all the attendees that if you have any follow-up questions, if you have any questions that haven't been addressed by this session, email them into the OGCA. We're happy to assist in any way possible. I do want to take the opportunity to thank the moderator, Brian, and the speakers, Ruby, Adam, and Chris, and Stephen, for the very thought-provoking, dynamic presentation, and timely as well, considering, we're all working from home and trapped within our own little bubbles. We should think security and how cyber risk affects everyone. I do want to take this opportunity to let everyone know that we have the next session will be coming up at 10 o'clock. It's artificial intelligence, keeping with the technology theme in construction. And at this point in time, for the next half hour, I invite everyone to go in social lounge for networking. Obviously, we can't do an actual physical coffee break, but we can do a virtual one. We've got tables set up throughout the lounge, and I welcome you. We have a number of table sponsors: Alliance Creative, Clack, Liberty Mutual, Northbridge Insurance, Western Surety, and Rosenberg and Parker. So with that being said, I will see you all back here at 10 o'clock for the next session. And in the interim, enjoy the lounge session. Thank you very much, one and all.